welcome everybody to this month's special edition of the digital and AI revolution. I think all of us are being impacted one way or another by the wonderful world of AI. And we're privileged today to have two specialists. Welcome, Elvis, you're sitting in Germany at the moment, Elvis, is that correct?
Yes, Dusseldorf. Actually,
The,
Neanderthal, east of Dusseldorf, the Neander Valley.
You'll tell us one day more about the Neanderthals there. And all the way from Virginia, Stephen Loynd. Thanks for joining us, Stephen.
Great to be here, Rod. Great to see everybody and excited for the chat.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And my good long-standing friend and colleague, Traci Freeman. Hi, Traci.
Hi, Rod. Thanks so much. Looking forward to today's chat.
Excellent. And sitting in the background, who does all the hard work in the background, Geraldine, who you won't see a picture of, but Geraldine's done all the admin behind this. So thank you for all your hard work there. I'm going to ask Traci if you won't please initiate the session. We'll be talking deeper into the world of digital and AI, but Traci's got a couple of slides just to set the scene for us, this being Africa Month. Over to you, Traci.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks, Rod. I thought it was such a prime opportunity for us to actually just share with our community a little bit around Africa Month. And many may not know, but it is Africa Month this month. So I thought it'd be a great opportunity for us just to chat about that. It's always such a privilege to gather with the global community and just teach them a little bit more and share a little bit more about the continent. So Africa Month is really, it's about a shared heritage that we have as the many countries that make up the continent. And the month of May is Africa Month, and that is off the back of the founding. I'm actually just going to flop screens here. It's off the founding of the Africa Unity, and that was founded on the 25th of May, 1963. The reason, and there were 32 states at that point in time that had actually founded the original Africa Union. And the reason for that was really to promote unity and solidarity across the different countries that were part of it. There was a big role that the countries played with regards to the support of decolonization and the end of apartheid, which is critical. It played a massive role in that. And really just to look at territorial integrity for the different countries that make up the continent, and really promote cooperation across a number of key areas, economic, social development, etc.
Sorry, Traci, can you just flick the slides a little bit? Oh. I think you're running behind on the slides.
I probably am. There we go.
There we go. Excellent. Thank you.
So much. So with the launch of the African Union in 2002, really there was a few things that were working previously and some things that weren't, and I'm going to flip slides again. So some of the areas that were working is that there was definitely liberation movements that we saw being supported, diplomacy and dialogue was continuing across these countries, and it was really setting a foundation for regional engagement and for political structures and sharing of knowledge, etc. But there were a few limitations to the previous union, which was that they had limited control when it came to supporting areas of conflict or resolution ability across those areas. There was inadequate responses when there were crises happening across different countries, and there wasn't really that enforcement mechanism that they were looking for. So it had a lot of bark, but no bite. And that is why in 2002, the actual African Union was launched. And you can see the difference here of the new sort of powers of the organization that was set up. And there's 55 member states that now make up the African Union. And it moved from looking at the sovereignty of the different countries that are members, really looking at how it can be more proactive in looking at peace and security across the different countries to support the continent, versus just being liberation organizations looking at the struggles happening in the different countries for various different reasons. It was really looking more at how, from an economic perspective, can we support one another across the African Union? And that's where a lot of the innovations have come through, and we'll speak a little bit about that today when we look at digital, because obviously digital is cross-border. So that was one of the important things that have come out. The African Union also now has the right to intervene during times of crises as opposed to non-intervention, which is important. And it really created the platform to be able to have a stronger, sort of more robust opportunity to engage around governance across the board, across verticals and countries, but really just to share across the countries from a governance perspective in governments. And you can see that there's been quite a few organizations that have been born out of this. There's a few that are listed there, but it's really about how do we look at the citizens across the African continent? How do we support the voices of every African that exists on the continent, looking at protection of legal rights, looking at the prevention and interventions when there is a conflict, and then obviously looking at economic liberation and unity across the continent. And the vision of the AU lives on through the AU's pursuit of a peaceful, prosperous, and integrated Africa. So it's really looking at how what the African Union has done, and I've specifically pulled out 3 organizations as examples of collaboration communities when it comes to digital growth promotion across the continent. From an African Union perspective specifically, there is a 2030 vision that they've been working on, and there's a whole community that is actually looking at how we collaborate across the union to make sure that there's consistency. Again, we'll unpack it a little bit more, but we know globally from an AI perspective, the do's and don'ts, standardization, the ethics of AI, etc., that comes into those conversations. But equally, there's other organizations, and really these are just 3 examples of numerous organizations that exist across the African continent, whether it be specific in one country or whether they're collaborating in blocks or across the continent as a whole. Really looking at how it is that we can share with one another and make sure that Africa really stands out in a way that it should be from a digital vantage point and from a leader in the space. And you can see here how the African Union has really played out a framework for the 2030 going up to 2063, how it is that they're going to be supporting the growth of digital across member states and hopefully beyond that, but really looking at key fundamentals, the foundation pillars, what is needed in each country in order to play in the space, what are the key sectors that should be supported from a vertical perspective, and then, of course, what are the cross-cutting themes. So I just thought it was really important for us to acknowledge Africa Day, which was on the 25th of May, and obviously Africa Month. As I mentioned, there's a huge amount of heritage that happens, that exists across the continent, and it's important for us to sort of share that knowledge. If I move on, though, what I would like to just bring up, and Rod, feel free to hop in at any point here, the birth of the Africa Federation of GBS Associations is really playing out what it is that's happening from an Africa Union perspective. And your vision, actually, Rod, of how it is that we can support the growth of global business services, of BPO, of shared services, and then, of course, of ITO across the continent, and share with one another as countries, both the more mature destinations, locations, as well as emerging, to make sure that we can be the leading continental location when it comes to supporting global needs, be it across CX or otherwise. But really how the Federation is looking to support the vision of a united Africa is looking at a couple of key areas that we believe are 8 strategic pillars in the global business services space. So always a key one is championing of impact sourcing. Really looking at how it is that we can support the upliftment and development of skills and youth employment opportunities, looking at how we can support and advocate for policy reforms and regional cooperation. Again, this is where the digital services delivery comes in, but areas that often get pulled out when we chat about this is across things like language, how it is that countries can be supporting a client across borders within Africa, but supporting multiple languages, which is an exciting opportunity that we haven't had before. And it's really about saying that what is the call to action from the community that's joining us today and those that will be joining us going into the future. And it's really about how do we build this digital future together, putting Africa at the forefront. How do we help support the 2030 digital vision? And how do we help support the upliftment of the very skills that we're going to be requiring in the digital space in order to move forward from an AI and beyond perspective? So super excited to have everybody here with us today, and really just want to start unpacking what the opportunities are and just saying thank you from the Africa Federation community, and thank you to our members that have joined us today. It's a community that's growing. We've got a number of associations and RPAs that have joined the Africa Federation and are exceptionally supportive. It's very robust sessions that we'll end up having when we have our steerco meet to say, what is the next opportunity? How can we collaborate better? And I'm sure we'll unpack a little bit of the activity that happened quite recently with many of our Federation members in Europe, Elvis and Rod, just to get a bit of an idea of what it is that we could be doing more of. So I think on that note, just to say, yeah, thanks, and really excited to be joining you in Africa Month.
Wonderful. Thanks for that, Traci. It's a really great setting the scene. I'm going to call Elvis. Won't you come in first, please? You've recently, in the last year or two, been doing a lot of work. We follow you on LinkedIn across Africa, running workshops in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Rwanda, and then more recently, you were very involved with the GIZ event up in Berlin 2 weeks ago. Won't you come in and just give us a high level of your credentials, just very briefly, and then the way that you are seeing the development of digital and AI happening in Africa, particularly the locations that you've been involved in. Over to you.
Right. Thank you, Rod. So, yeah, I'm a research associate at Duisburg-Essen University in Germany. And I've been looking at the future of work in Africa for 14 years now, trying to understand what technology is doing to the labor force, to workers, what chances is it giving to African workers to partake and grab a larger slice of the global value chains. And so AI is it's huge. So we're currently writing a study on the AI impact on the GBS sector in Africa. So Karibu Digital with Genesis Analytics recently did a similar study, and we're building on that with case studies from Rwanda and Ghana. So that's the one part. That's where the workshops come in. Try to understand in a one-day workshop how far can people go with AI? How much can they build that they didn't think they could build before? So that's what we've been doing. Maybe I'll leave it there for a minute because the other part is the Federation. I really want to praise you guys, but it's a bit of a different topic. So I just maybe that's what I do on a day to day. And then last week we had this phenomenal experience in Berlin with 6 of your member countries of the Federation. It really Pan-African. Yeah, I'd really love to say a bit more about that later on.
Let's come back to that and expand on that a wee bit. But Stephen, if you'll come in, you're sitting watching Africa from your vantage point and your global reach, sitting out of the US. Why don't you give us a quick high level of the way that you and the GBS, BPO, IT community are maybe looking at Africa, and warts and all, the elephants in the room, and the opportunities. So over to you.
Thanks, Rod. Thank you again for having me. And I've been covering the business process space for many years and founded TrendsOwl about 5 years ago. So I'm here right across the Potomac from Washington, D.C. And thanks to Traci and yourself and Mark Angus, I've been over to Africa a few times over the years. And I think of myself now.
Apologies.
Whoops. Think of myself
Okay.
now as a bit of an ambassador for the continent, in a sense, specifically the Africa Federation. I was at an event up in Cambridge, Massachusetts at MIT, the Kuo Sharper Center for Entrepreneurship. And it struck me, many of the presentations that they were talking about innovating, emerging economies could have been taken right from some of the presentations that I've seen in my visits to Africa. And so, it's extraordinary. The US, you mentioned elephant in the room. I think there's still a lot of space and room for relearning what Africa really is and what it's all about and the vast potential that's there. I think there's still a lot of misunderstanding in the US about the sheer size of the opportunity, the diversity of the continent, and the more conversations I have with people, it really hits home that it's what you're doing with the Federation is very important because, and I'll end on this, my introductory remarks, I suppose. One thing that I'm convinced of with the pace of technological change, and Elvis and I have talked about this. We were talking about this in Kigali a couple of years ago at the hotel bar, the speed of technological change, the importance of collaborating on individual levels as well as organizational levels and across enterprises is going to be really important. And thank you, Elvis, for a little plug of my book there. But we have to keep talking to each other and spreading the news and spreading the word and helping to educate each other about the realities. There's still so many misunderstandings out there. And at a time like this, the pace of change is so fast. We have to keep working together. So great to be here again, and thanks for having me.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Stephen. We'll certainly come back to that, and I'm sure you'll be able to provide the Federation with some guidance in how we should be structuring the communications, the messaging, to make those changes to perceptions. Elvis, back to you on this one. And what you just unpack, before we talk about Berlin and the gathering there, your workshops that you've been running, I noticed you were in Ghana, you were in Nigeria, Rwanda, where else? Why don't you unpack what you're doing there and your perception of the talent that we have in Africa that needs training, releasing, motivating. But over to you. I would really look forward to your views on this one.
Right. So it started with we're doing research on, what's the future of work, what's AI doing to workers, and there's not a single method out there that I find satisfying in terms of telling us, like, we can ask other experts and we'll tell each other our opinions, or probably a third person's opinion that we both like, and or we can ask workers, right? Or we can look at kind of trends on labor markets, which are slightly better but tricky because it just hasn't really hit yet. But when you use these tools, you see that it's gonna hit, right? I just imagine this time before steam engines and after steam engines, or the first year of the printing press. You just know something huge is changing right now. And I just thought, okay, how can we measure this? How can we try to understand what young people who are hungry and ready to go can do with this stuff? And we just thought, okay, we'll put them through a one-day workshop and ask them to solve problems with AI that they didn't think they could solve with a little bit of guidance. This can be coding problems with, Lovable or Bolt, or just general, any problem in your ecosystem that you know well about that you can solve with AI. And we do that in the course of the day. And the idea behind that is I have no idea where BPO GBS is going, if global value chains are going to be a thing in the future, or if the global north is going to do so great in terms of having, robot servants and AGI and all that, and we need to solve regional problems. Either way, I think it's good to understand for us as researchers and for the participants of the workshops what can be done with AI, what we can solve, and what can't yet be done, but just get a taste of what can be done, what we can do. So that's really the idea of doing these one-day workshops. And the format is a one-day. I don't know if that's the best format so far. That's what we've landed on. I think it's better than just doing an hour lecture and people are, suppressing their yawns when they're listening to me speak. I don't know if a 2-day workshop would be better, if we can just kind of like have like a like a weekend course. It's just, we're also just kind of feeling our way through this.
Yeah. Elvis, I've seen some of the reports that you've posted on LinkedIn there, but from you on the ground there, what do these youngsters come away with at the end of that day? Is it a passionate belief in AI, in themselves, in the future, in careers? What is it they come away with?
Right. So, and this is really, these workshops are part of research, so I'm really not trying to sell them to anyone. I'm just kind of reporting. They come away with this. We usually at 2 in the afternoon, 2:30 in the afternoon, we have this, what I call the jaw-dropping moment, where you realize that you can actually do something. It's hard work still, which is beautiful. It's not, I always have this, don't use AI as an electric lawnmower. Don't use AI as you go do this thing for me, and then whatever you come back with, I'll just take it and copy paste. No, you have to manage AI. So the certificate of the workshop is called Manager of AI. So you're managing 3 different AIs. Well, you interview 7 large language models, meaning with your first prompt, you interview a 1.5-page long prompt about a problem that you know about because it's in your organization, right? That the AI doesn't really know about it because it's in your small ecosystem. You interview 7 large language models. Depending on the answers they give you back, you hire for the day 3 of them. And then you use those 3 to check each other and work with each other, and you scaffold. And at the end of the day, you present, which I don't like to say before because people don't show up at the workshop if I tell them they have to present something at the end. But at the end, you pitch. And that's hard. Like, I mean, I tell people at the beginning, not all of you are going to get the certificate. This is going to be hard work and you're exhausted. But afterwards, you realize, wow, if I put this effort in, this pressure that I have that I need to present afterwards, and I'm going to maybe be the one in the room that doesn't get the certificate. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to work hard with AI, with this new weird way of working. That's when you get this feeling of exponential power, that you feel like, oh, wow, I can do so much. I actually finished this project that this morning I didn't have an answer to.
Wow, that's the wow moment. That's the jaw drop. Yeah.
Nice.
We'll come back to the how we see that perhaps rolling out. But you've already given me ideas. I think it's time we ran one of your workshops virtually, hosted by the Federation. Traci, I'm going to ask you to come in here because I think the deployment of AI is going to have an impact, negative and positive. On the one hand, we are passionate about job creation, employment, societal impact, etc. But AI seems to cut across that in some respects. So we'll open up that debate. But Trace, won't you come in and just with a very brief heads up on impact sourcing and the way that you see it across Africa, the way we have introduced it into the fundamentals of the Federation?
Yeah, thanks, Rod. So a couple of the participants I can see were at the recent CX Outsourcers event that was hosted in Germany. And what we found quite interesting, and there will be a podcast coming out soon that kind of has a couple of the participants speaking about this. So I'll just pull from that. But when AI first sort of launched in 2022, and we had our first CXO in 2023, and then the next one in 2024, there was a lot of opinions in the room about where is AI going. It's big, bad, and scary. It's going to chomp up all the jobs. This last year, what I really enjoyed was sort of 3 weeks ago in Germany, was there was a lot more evidential data that was coming out around AI and how it can be utilized. And I think it was Kerry Ranskill from HGS that actually said the way that she was seeing it is that it's not, and this is partially answering impact sourcing, because I know often it's assumed that there's that much more training that's required for somebody that comes from a marginalized environment and hasn't got the necessary skills. But the skills that are going to be required for the community that's going to be servicing the global client and customer base with AI coming in, they're not going to be more complex necessarily. They're just going to be different skills. And those skills are going to be teachable to all. So impact sourcing is still going to play a fundamental role across Africa, because at the end of the day, and this was also very evident with some really great presentations coming from different verticals at CXO, there are times when you need to have a human-to-human engagement. Specifically, when you're looking at it from an empathetic perspective, there are certain conversations that just cannot be had with AI or any kind of automation. And that is where we know that citizens living across the African continent have that in absolute buckets and spades, which is the empathy, the sympathy that's required to do a human-to-human connection. So I think the work that Elvis is doing is fantastic because it's taking the fear factor out of AI. It's giving individuals the know-how, the confidence to start working with different types of tools. In this case, it's AI. But I do foresee that we are still going to see the growth of the employment of individuals across the African continent, across the countries that are doing well in BPO, because we are going to top and tail AI with a human. So I think many have said, I'm not the first to say this, and I'm probably borrowing from many, but it's not about either AI or the human agent. It's about how do the humans work with AI and vice versa. How does AI become a tool for the humans? And that is irrelevant of if it's an impact worker or a standard recruit.
Thank you for that, Traci. I'm going to ask Stephen your views now, looking at it from a global point of view, but with a particular focus on how the US market might be, the expectations of the US market in terms of the human technology balances. Is there a drive towards more tech and less human, or vice versa? And the second part of that is, how would the market, the US market, see societal impact, our whole impact sourcing model? Is it important when it comes to negotiating a BPO GBS contract? So over to you.
Great question, Rod. I think on the first point that you're asking about, and Elvis held up my book a few minutes ago, there really is an obsession in the US about accelerating innovation. And as far as AI goes, back to my theme of misunderstandings, this time with the technology, to echo some of what Traci was saying, I think there's a misunderstanding around how fast, ironically, this is going to infiltrate industries such as the BPO industry as far as taking away jobs. I think Traci's right. The emotional intelligence component of AI is key because they use this term jagged intelligence. AI is doing these incredible things, solving equations in science and medicine and mathematics, etc. But sometimes when it comes to the simplest exchange with the human interface, understanding somebody's emotions, the AI is still having a lot of trouble doing that, not to mention some of the hallucinations that are also a challenge for a lot of business leaders, not just in the US, that don't want to turn over necessarily or trust in totality their data or their business to the AI yet. At the same time, AI is racing ahead at an amazing pace. So these two things are happening at once. And I think young people here are very excited about the opportunity. I think they're optimists as far as the fact that although some workflows will develop in one area that will be automated, there'll be and maybe there'll be less need for a human agent. There are going to be other areas spawned, and it's happening now where the need is going to increase for human interaction. So those two things are happening at once. And I've long believed as we move deeper and deeper into this world of massive interconnection, that new opportunities are going to be growing and spawned. Like look at TikTok. Nobody really saw that coming just a few years ago. So you're going to have that phenomenon that's going to be impacting the GBS sector and the business process services sector as well. So I'm very much an optimist, and I think young people, not just in the US, but in other places, are pretty optimistic. When you get into a contact center and you see the complexity of the data across different industries that demand different nuances and different understandings, there's still a lot of things to be done there that human beings are going to need to be involved in.
Well, that's good news for Africa because when we look at the potential and we do the extrapolations, we'll be looking at creating pretty close to 1 million jobs in the next 5 years. Tracy, you've got the figures on that. What's the objective, the 2030 objective in terms of GBS BPO growth?
Yo, Rod, I'll have to pull that out. It is quite big. I know that there are specific sort of country goals that they've aligned in public-private partnerships with government, where they've definitely got a target that they're looking at. I'll pull out the number for everybody. But yeah, it is a massive number.
Excellent. Well, we'll come back to that one there because I think it's how we get there is using the resources, the human resources and the technical resources. That's the carrier to take us into that space. Elvis, back to you from a researcher's point of view. You're working in the workshop space now. Are you starting to evolve a model that you might be able to look at for how best Africa and the different regions and country and national bodies should be embracing the education and knowledge sharing going forward from an employment point of view, how do we create jobs? Your views.
Yeah. So I think there's this old saying, you build a scenario and, there's three ways to go and you just pick the middle one. And if you're wrong, you can also say it was one of the other two. So in terms of the speed with which AI is moving currently, it's almost eerie that we seem to be living in a script that was written by Ray Kurzweil 30 years ago, where he said the mid 2020s are going to get weird because that's when we're going to have the knee of the bend, when we're going to lift off from the x-axis and hit the y-axis, and some funny stuff is going to happen. And that's exactly what's happening right now. People used to think Ray Kurzweil was too bullish on AI, and all he did was just, extrapolate out on an exponential curve. And it's so weird for humans to be on an exponential curve that we just can't fathom it. So now we have the leaders of the lab saying that, we might have artificial general intelligence in 2 years. Famous economist Tyler Cowen said ChatGPT's O3 is already general intelligence. I would maybe slightly disagree, but in his particular field, it might be. So we have this human level AI with us. We have these experts that are infinitely patient and a bit weird, very weird. And we need to get to work with those guys. So we need to get to manage them. We need to get to figure out how they work. And then I think we can all agree on that BPO is not going to look the way it does today in 5 years. So if we have a strategy for 2030, I hope we have room for maneuvering within that strategy, right? Like pivoting. So I'm thinking of the three scenarios, slow takeoff, middle takeoff, fast takeoff. Let's not look at fast takeoff because I think if we have fast takeoff, we're going to have other issues than thinking about BPO. We're going to have, we might very well have universal basic income. And then we need to look at distribution, right? It's going to be totally different. Nobody's going to have to work. Everybody can be, I was going to say a podcaster, as many of us here are, because we love to be. So the middle takeoff is the one I'd look at because you'd have to do a lot of explaining to say, okay, all progress is going to stop now. Even if it were to stop, this is what Ethan Mollick says, even if all progress were to stop now, we would take 5 to 10 years to figure out what just happened, right? How do we use this technology? But I would say the more realistic thing to say is that, and then I'll stop, is it's going to get better. People, you've seen this probably, people are starting to make movies with AI. The next version of Nollywood in Nigeria is going to get better because creative people in with scarce resources, this is perfect for them. And we're going to find new openings, like Steven said, like TikTok. Some of those openings, I don't know if you guys remember Clubhouse, that was there for 5 minutes. Some of those openings are going to close again. Well, that's fine. But some of them are just going to explode, and I think that's phenomenal.
Yeah, I think, if I can just jump in,
Yeah, please,
Rod,
Stephen. Yes, absolutely.
what's remarkable, what's happening, it is surreal. Things are moving so fast, as Elvis is saying, and nobody quite knows for sure um, where everything is headed. And that, to me, suggests what I saw last week in the contact center that I visited, that I mentioned. The 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 young people that get the answer is to get involved now and just to keep learning and to keep coming up with new ideas, part of what it sounds like Elvis is doing in a lot of his seminars. There is no other answer. And that's very exciting because when you meet young, I mean, I met some really charismatic, bright people, young people that were telling me about how they're solving new challenges in the contact center in both the B2C and the B2B space. And then showing me on the screens um, some of the things that were involved in that and some of the avenues that they'd chosen to take. And you get a real sense of energy and innovation in real time that's taking place from human beings, young human beings. And then when you think about Africa, I mean, all the young people, the demographics and the entrepreneurial vigor of a place like Nigeria is just one example. I mean, or Kenya, where all these things are happening. I mean, the answer for me is just everybody no matter what you do, get involved and just work with others and collaborate, and new solutions, new ideas, new businesses are going to be spawned, I think, at a rate that we can't even imagine. I mean, I'm the Ray Kurzweil graph that Elvis is talking about. It's amazing when you see it. And the thing that blows me away about when he shows that graph, most people think at first that he's talking about Moore's law, the transistor phenomenon where the power of computing is doubling every year and a half or whatever. But he actually explains that the exponential curve of technology transcends that phenomenon before Moore's law really started. And so it goes deeper than that, and human beings are a part of it. So we all have to just stay involved, and young people more and more, they're going to be the ones that are discovering solutions, whether it be in the contact center or other environments. So it's really an exciting time.
Right, I
Uh,
just want to add on to what Stephen
mm,
said there. Sorry. So one of the things that's really a benefit from an African perspective. So we obviously globally, but I mean Africa, it's true as well, have digital natives. The young people that are coming to the world of work now, this is the world they've been born into. So, us sitting on the call here, we may be going, well, how and where, and it seems so strange and it's so different to how we normally do things. This is their status quo. This is how they operate every day. And the win for Africa is because we haven't had a lot of the legacy systems already embedded, they're hitting it where it's at. They're not having to navigate and leapfrog older systems and legacy systems. What they're seeing is status quo for them. It's what they wake up to every day. So obviously they need access, they need exposure to it, but this is just their world. It's not scary. It's not new for them. It's just their world,
Mhm.
and that's where they're operating.
Well, it's amazing that's in venture capital today. You see this more and more. The investments in AI native companies that are building new companies around AI. And so to Tracy's point, you've got a whole category of firms that will have issues around legacy systems and adapting those. And then you're going to have this whole universe of AI native enterprises. And think about Africa. I mean, they're going to have the young people are going to have an innate understanding of this because that's what they're, as Tracy said, they're digital natives. So they're going to be way ahead of the curve in a lot of ways. Really amazing stuff.
well, all very exciting, but there's a very interesting question coming to the QA box. Lindsay Wallet, thanks so much for that one, because it really addresses, never mind legacy systems, but legacy people, like some of us. Um, and Lindsay's question there is there a framework for any organization to test for and assess skills of existing call center agents, team leaders, supervisors, so that we can enhance those skills? Up till now, we've been talking about youngsters coming in, learning for the first time, entrance into the BPO sector. But what about those who are already there? This is a very nice, interesting question, Lindsay. Thanks for that. I'm going to ask first Elvis to review that because you've been doing a lot of work in that space. How do you see that progressing?
Right, Rod. So I'm biting my teeth at that. I don't know, and please tell me if one of you can help me with this. I don't think there really is. For what I see is on. I keep getting asked, what is the pattern? What is the pattern that you're seeing? I see Brandon Eichen on this call. Hey, Brandon, we just spoke last week about what's happening at Concentrix. What's the direction? How are we moving? And not to bring this back to my workshops, if I hold a workshop with a young group of people, on average, they're better, they're quicker, they're faster at using AI, but only on average. AI is this tool that's going to help quick, smart, fast, eager people get even better. And it's going to be trouble for the others. That's the thing. I have a friend who's in her 50s and she has a soap dispenser store. She works in she runs a factory for soap dispensers and she's phenomenal at using AI. She keeps teaching me stuff and I'm like, hey, I'm running these workshops, but she keeps teaching me things about how to use it. And it's just, and she's in her 50s and she's great. And then, a lot of young people that I tell, hey, listen, you got to engage with it. Don't take its answer for it. They don't manage to do it. But then on average, I think younger people are better at it. But again, it's going to help. This is the Matthew effect, right? Those who have will be given. It's going to help the strong. It's going to help the eager. It's going to help those who are willing to wield this sword in new ways. And that's going to be the framework. It's really, this is what it feels like to live inside a revolution these last 2 years. A technological revolution. We've been in a slower technological revolution. Now we're in a fast one. And I think the framework will show itself in the sense that these people are going to build things that we didn't know we needed, kind of like the iPhone, right? Or the iPod, right? Like they're going to make things and we're going to be like, oh, wow, okay, all right, you're the one who made use of AI then.
Okay. Now, Elvis, you stay on the line on this one, if you will. Won't you tell us more about the gathering in Berlin last week or the week before? Because I think you were working with 5 or 6
Right.
of our member or representatives of various member associations, and no doubt you were able to better understand the challenges that each have in their particular countries or regions. So, won't you just elaborate on the event, the GIZ event in Berlin?
Yeah, so this was phenomenal. I was brought on late, so 2 weeks before the event started as a consultant. GIZ did a crazy thing. I mean, they brought together 6 countries, 20 ITO BPO companies from 6 countries. All of those companies were selected based on merit and a few other points, like how much exposure do they have already to the global north. And they paid their own ways, they paid their own flights, they paid their own hotel rooms. All that we offered to them was that we were going to put them in touch with German European companies who might be interested in buying their services or investing in their geographies, right? So from those 6 countries, these 6 countries were in North Africa, Egypt and Morocco. And then in Sub-Saharan Africa, they were Kenya, Ghana, Rwanda, and Ethiopia. From those countries, we had phenomenal companies come along and speak with German European companies that, we were on the phone. My colleague Anne is on the call here too. We were on the phone a lot trying to get those companies into the room to speak with the African companies. And the idea was that in Europe, maybe not so much in England or America, but in Europe, it's still a bit Africa and IT outsourcing isn't really used in the same sentence. It's just not really something people think about, that Africa can compete on that level. And we just wanted to, change the face of Africa a little bit, like show a little bit of a different face of having these charismatic leaders who have built these companies, who by self-selection are strong companies that are already exporting to the global north, standing across from them, shaking their hand, hearing them speak in a room. It's different. I mean, I love these seminars, but it's still not the same as being face to face. It's different to try to convince someone to buy your product, to buy your service through a screen, through a phone line. And that's really what we tried to do. So getting together these 6 ecosystems, the GBS associations, for potential investors to give them a soft landing in one of these 6 countries, and bring along the ecosystem, bring along some of the companies from each of those countries. It was a phenomenal thing, I think. And it was just, again, I'm not praising myself because I just got brought on the last 2 months. But before that, to just even take that on, I really hope that this can go forward and that we can do another one like this and continue this.
So, Rod, if I may throw a question at Elvis, through to Elvis, you said one of the things is that from a European perspective, Africa and IT is never in the same sentence. Post meeting with these organizations, what was there a shift in perception? Do you believe that deals are going to be done? What was the takeaway for you?
Good question. To be honest, I can't say at this moment. Like this was last week, right? So we're having a survey now with the sellers, right? How many leads did you have? Like where did this go for you? Then we're going to reach out to the potential buyers, but there, anyone who's done B2B, you have to be careful reaching out to the buyers too much because you want them to come back. You don't want them to feel pressured. So I wish I could say right now, but it's just very anecdotal at this point to say, okay, well, what I can say is that I feel a lot of times in this room, we are in a little bit of an echo chamber. When I do reach out to German companies whom I would not have reached out, or who I don't meet in my echo chamber, I was actually surprised at how different the perception amongst many of those companies still was compared to what we're seeing on the ground in Africa. And that's just a perception thing that I think we may have made a dent in it, but we need more events like this, more visibility to change that, to have these people on a stage to really show what they can do, show their case studies, and just expand their business into Europe to just show that this is, and it's happened in the past. I mean, what was it? When my mom was a kid, there was a saying, "Don't throw that food away. There's children in China starving." I mean, there's still problems in China, but it's not a lack of economic prosperity, right? So it's very fast that these perceptions change, and I think the people in this room and also the people listening are in that group of people who can actually really make a dent in that, and I find that exciting.
Thanks for that. And I'm going to come back to Stephen now. We're dealing with perceptions now. As Elvis explained, perception of Europe, of Africa seen from a European point of view. We touched on it earlier, American perception of Africa. I'm going to put you on the block here to say, your opinion and advice of how the members of the Federation, member countries and their national bodies, etc., and the investment agencies, how should we be working to change perceptions? Let's look at it from a US point of view, to make the Africa's offerings more appealing in terms of delivering, never mind the social responsibility or the labor arbitrage or any of those factors, just the pure delivery of high quality AI or digitally enhanced GBS and BPO.
Well,
Big
great
question.
question, Rod. And just
Big one.
hammer away at the talent. That's the number one thing. The young people that are high energy, entrepreneurial, want to learn. And I've been to a number of African countries, from Senegal to Ghana to Rwanda down to South Africa a number of times, thanks to you guys. And I've met so many talented young people. So Elvis said this earlier, bring them in to speak, to group face, so people can understand, I'm thinking of America specifically. At the same time, I feel like I need to remind people that America and Europe, the United States and Europe, face an array of challenges ourselves. Another piece of advice I would give to this project as it continues to evolve is make sure that the mission remains inclusive. You must bring everybody along on the journey. Look at what has happened in the United States, and this is not a political statement, but in the 90s and the first decade of this century, perhaps the political class forgot about a large segment of the working class in the United States. The distribution of wealth, there was tremendous wealth generated from global trade, but the distribution matter was not addressed. And a lot of anger built in the United States. And now look, if you look around, things are, no one would believe some of the things that have happened over the last decade or so. Well, that's a result, it seems to me, in part of, in the face of the China shock and then maybe some automation and the pace of technology, forgetting that it's a project. We must bring everyone along together to make this thing sing and to make it work. And so it's not just the continent of Africa that has challenges these days. Europe has loads of them, and the United States has loads of them. So the two big things, the talent on the continent of Africa, I've seen it, I've experienced it, is going to become more and more obvious as time goes on. And business leaders in the United States need to understand that and experience it. And then number two, don't forget to be inclusive. Because I'm sitting in a place, Washington, D.C., and I can see it all the kind of dislocation. I'll end on this point. I just happened to be skimming the New York Times this morning. I saw that the great Kenyan writer Ngugi passed away. In college, I read Weep Not Child, Devil on the Cross, and in part of the article, they mentioned that Harold Macmillan in 1960 referred to the time they were living in as the wind of change. And they talk about what was happening in Kenya, but also the world. Well, that was, 65 years ago. And here we are, the same things happening. The winds are faster and more powerful. But we need to remember that, we can manage change if we work together and collaborate, to come full circle on my initial point, which is such a great thing to see, the launch of the Federation. And just looking forward to following and being involved as you guys go forward.
Well, thank you very much for that, Stephen. And coming from you, that's a great compliment. And I think it inspires us to drive onwards and upwards. As we're sort of still learning the ropes with the Federation, we are working closely with the member country national bodies. And one of the inspiring things about this project, and again, any inputs would be valuable, we find in countries where there are BPO, GBS operators, but no association, no collective, no body to engage with government to discuss and to craft incentives, etc. And that's perhaps one of the biggest challenges we have is to take them on a journey. And we're talking about countries, they may be small at this stage, like Namibia, like Botswana, Mauritius, Mozambique, Madagascar, where we know there are operations, but we need to bring those, as you used the term inclusivity, bring them in. So that's one of the big challenges we have there. And to some large extent, we'll be relying on your insights, Elvis, Stephen, and others in our global network to advise, guide, and mentor and assist the Federation to achieve these goals. And I see Paige Webster's on the call there. Thanks, Paige. Marketing, one voice. Yes, agreed. I think that's really what we're trying to do. And we've got some amazing people in the Federation at the moment. The status as we are now, we have a steering committee. And by the end of the year, we will have a full board. And I think at that point in time, hopefully we will have the funding to be able to take this model, take this message into the European market, into the US market, and do exactly as you've recommended. Take the real live Africans, all of us, into those environments to engage with the buyer side of things. Tracy, your views on that? We're coming close to wrap up now, but once again, I'm going to ask you to put the spin on the human element as opposed to the technology, on the, the societal impact that GBS BPO can make on the continent.
Oh, it can't be stated enough, Rod. I mean, we've seen it over the many projects that have been sort of played out across the African continent. And we know that on average, one employed individual is supporting between sort of 4 and 9 individuals back at home. And what happens is, in true sort of African way, still living in the kind of communities that many Africans do, that the responsibility of that individual that's earning is immediately to their family, but we're seeing them bettering themselves, putting themselves through education, ensuring that their siblings continue with education where they may possibly not have before. So that is the impact of having a job, besides the very obvious of being able to have a roof over your head and eating more meaningfully, which is obviously critical. But what we definitely are seeing, and I'm actually, at some point, I'd love to unpack this a little bit more, Elvis, with some of the projects that I've been involved in over the years, when the young people were given the tools and the opportunity to do, at that point, it was some coding, at this point, it's playing with AI, and they were given a bit of carte blanche. So I'm not sure sort of what framework you're giving at the moment, Elvis, but what literally just brought tears to my eyes, and it warmed me from the socks up, was that you would have a community of individuals sitting in a room, giving access to a laptop or a computer for the first time, never having played with one before, given the basic fundamentals, and then literally told, go solve a problem, like you're doing, Elvis. And what amazed me, I sat there thinking, well, of course, there's going to be some phenomenal sort of investment portfolio models that are brought up, and they're going to see how they can self-enrich and self-support. And not once did I see that. Every single time that there was something that was developed or created by these individuals and communities, it was, how can they better the collective? How can they feed something back into their community? And it literally seems to be innate in your African individual about, a rising tide lifts all, and how do I make things better for those around me? So the human element exists, that empathy that we're speaking about exists. And the beautiful thing is that voice, that love, that empathy gets to be shared from Africa to the world through the GBS sector. And I do believe that we are still going to continue to see employment opportunities, and they're going to look slightly different to what they do now. As Elvis said right in the beginning, things are about to shift, and we don't quite know. We're guessing a little bit. But from a human element perspective, the world is lucky that Africa is available to support and service. And there's just a phenomenal, amazing amount of talent across the continent. The countries are working hard. We're working together, which is why I'm so super chuffed about the Africa Federation. And Paige, yes, then yes, one voice, and let's take it forward on behalf of the African youth and talent.
Thank you for that, Tracy. Now, just as we wrap up, Stephen, your last words and advice and your sage guidance.
Just to reiterate what I said earlier, the winds of change are here faster than ever, and let's remember to work together and collaborate, and bring each other along on the journey. A lot of sort of dislocation and disruption here in the U.S. Just remember what can happen if you forget that project at large. So. And the talent, the young people, just the entrepreneurial vigor and the opportunity ahead to really use technology to innovate and create more possibilities going forward.
Thank you for that. Elvis, your last words.
Thank you, guys. So I just really want to put it back to you, the Federation. Having just seen this week, there are all these psychology experiments about, putting people on a bus together and seeing a community grow. For you guys to say, hey, this is a federation of associations, this is more of a collaboration than a competition. And I saw that in action in Berlin. I mean, I saw these leaders of these companies. All of these companies need to grow their businesses. Everybody, we all do, right? So to some extent, you might think it's a zero-sum game, but somehow it's not. It's not a zero-sum game. It's helping each other create business on the continent, across borders. Initially, we thought, how do we, make these groups of, 3 companies from each country plus the federations of each country. How do we make them interact with each other more? And David Gowell can attest to this. It was just phenomenal to see how to bring federation members together, um, can just really forge a bond, and I think also business opportunities going forward. So this is something I would want to leave this group with, is just to, whether or not we get funding from GIZ or the like, I would be really happy to help somehow get this going, get this moving forward, to have more like actual road trips with
Yeah.
maybe all 12 associations, right? Maybe in Europe, maybe in South Africa. So one thing is, changing Europe's mind about Africa, but another thing is about just getting together, being physically together, and just, like becoming a team.
Wonderful. And thank you for using the word we, because we see you as part of us, and Stephen as well, and we've got a lot of other friends. And also, in closing, missing in action today because he's traveling is Traci and my colleague Mark Angus, who many of you know. And it's a lot of the work that Mark did in the background researching the GBS sector across Africa over the last 5-10 years that has given rise to the ability to put together this community. And Elvis, your words just ring so true. It's we have to build a community, rely on each other. Down here in the South, we use a term called Ubuntu. We exist because we all exist. So thank you very much around the room. Traci, thanks for setting it up and for your introduction. Stephen, thanks for joining us and your sage wisdom. And Elvis, not only for this today, but for the work that I know you do in the background supporting the Fed in Europe and your research. So thank you to everybody, and to those who've attended. Thank you so much for sharing time with us and for these beautiful comments coming through. I really appreciate that. And we'll be running once a month with the Africa Federation with different topics, and we look forward to seeing you all on the next webinar. For those who didn't make it today, we will be doing an edited version of the recording, and we'll be putting that up on the Africa Federation website. So please follow us on LinkedIn, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon. And yes, we did put, Stephen, we put your book into the chat live so everybody can get get their copies of it. Thank you,
Thanks for
everybody,
having me,
once
guys.
again.
Thanks, everyone. Great to see you, gents.
Goodbye.
Bye.